Well, let me just say one word about capitalism. There's a slogan that you hear. It's easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. I would change it. It's easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the beginning of capitalism. They want a powerful state to intervene constantly to protect them against the ravages of the market and to subsidize them and to support them.
Yeah, when they're asking for customers, for citizens, to subsidize the companies, they're asking customers to pay the insurance fees for these companies that have insured themselves against falling prices in an environment in which prices are rising.
Homem gosta muito de mulher, mas tem uma coisa que homem gosta mais do que mulher, rapaziada, que é dinheiro.
They've shorted their own price, and they are now asking for the citizens to pay for it.
Guys who own and run the place, the ones who Adam Smith called the masters of mankind, they've never permitted capitalism. No capitalist society could survive, and the business world knows it. So we've never had capitalism. We have one or another variety of state capitalism, when the powerful state is there to take care of the important people, the ones who own and run the place. That's what's called capitalism.
Comrades, if you really want an indication of what's the matter, besides the fact that prices are going up, there's a war in Ukraine, supply chains have been interrupted. Look at the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is a very good case in point because it is self-sufficient. More or less 50%, actually more than 50% of Britain's electricity needs are covered by wind power, wind energy, electricity at zero marginal cost, and nuclear. As for the gas reliance, which is around 35% using natural gas, all of it comes from the North Sea. So in other words, the UK doesn't need Russian gas, doesn't need Texan LNG, doesn't need to import anything. And yet, you'll see that the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, is promising to do something to cap the cost of electricity. Now, why is the cost of electricity in the UK rising as fast as it is rising here in Greece, where we have, almost no natural gas that we produce, or Italy for that matter? The reason is Thatcher.
This is the future.
Because Thatcher privatized the electricity system in the UK and introduced the idea that privatization is a good thing for the people, not for the oligarchs, but for the people.
Capitalism never began. The business classes would never permit it.
The idea being that the market knows better how to reduce costs than the state. State bureaucracies, state-owned and run electricity grids and power stations. Privatization in the United Kingdom is crucial because the model of the United Kingdom was then extended to the rest of the European Union. That's why it's important to understand the two phases, the two steps in which it happened. The first step was to say, okay, what's your price now? How much are you paying for your electricity? You pay 50 quid per, I don't know how many kilowatt hours. Okay, we're going to cap it. We're not going to allow the price to go beyond what you're paying. And then we're going to privatize, and we will allow competition to bring it down. If it brings it down, you gain, consumer, right? If they don't succeed, they are still capped at 50. So you've got nothing to lose, you only have things to gain. That was a very powerful argument. If you add to that the fact that they were giving away shares to the people, who then, of course, sold them to the oligarchs, that it was impossible to stop privatization of gas initially and then electricity. Second phase was to say, but who am I as a politician to be deciding what the cap of the price is, the maximum price? Why should politicians decide that? Let the market do it. So that's phase two, the more toxic phase of privatization, which is responsible for the fact that we are having bouts of energy poverty and more general poverty in Europe. The second phase was to say this: instead of having ministers or bureaucrats deciding the maximum price, what you're going to do is we're going to simulate a market. We can't have a market when it comes to electricity. We need to simulate, to pretend we have a market. Why can't we have a market when it comes to electricity? Well, the only way we could have a market of electricity is, imagine if there were 30, 50 different cables, electrical cables coming into your home, and you could choose which one you're going to take your electricity from. Then there would be a market, then there would be some kind of competition between different providers. But of course, it would be stupid to have 50 grids going through every house and every street in every country. So they simulate the market. And how do they do that? They say, okay, we're going to split. That's the Thatcherite model, which prevails today in Europe. That's why I'm sticking to the UK example as a good example of what's going on. So they say, okay, we're going to split the electricity company that used to be the state-owned electricity company. We're going to split it in at least 3 parts. First will be power generation. So each power plant, you have a coal-fired power station, you have a natural gas-fired power station, you have a bunch of solar panels, some windmills, you have a nuclear power station. Each one of them becomes a company or is owned by some company that may own more than one. And these companies compete with one another in the wholesale market. So they compete to provide the system with a wholesale price. Okay, that's one part. The second part is the network, the grid. That belongs to another company. And then there is the part where electricity leaves the grid to go into your home. That's where you create 10, 5, 8, 20 providers, electricity providers, who compete with one another in the market of buying the electricity from the grid, which has bought it from the producers, and then selling it to us, consumers, firms and households, competing with one another. So you simulate competition between the producers. They produce the wholesale price through this competition. And then you have the providers who are competing with one another. The idea there is to allow competition to shrink the distance between the wholesale price and the retail price. Again, that was phase 2 of privatization. And this is what is now prevailing in the European Union. They copied the Thatcherite phase 2 model. Now, when you simulate a market, because it's not a real market, it's a pretend market. It's a market that you're pretending is there when it's not. You need to have certain government-imposed rules, simply because you don't have a real market. You have a government pretending, simulating a market. So the EU has forced governments, has agreed their intergovernmental decisions, effectively France and Germany agreeing it amongst themselves, and then imposing it on the rest of the European Union. And let me give you an example of what these rules are. So every day, today is Thursday, 8th of September. Today there was an auction in the Netherlands. Well, it's based on, it's done digitally, so it's not physically. I mean, the servers where the auction takes place are in the Netherlands. The producers supposedly bid amongst themselves about who's going to provide the system. But the interesting thing is that it's exactly the opposite of what common sense would tell you should happen. When it comes to a proper auction and you've got people selling stuff, you would expect that the company or the person offering the lowest price wins, right? No. In this market, the company offering the highest price wins. And then the price is the same for everybody, as long as the sum of the electricity that they have provided is no more than a certain amount, which is what the market demands. It's madness, okay? It's called marginal cost price. And then, supposedly, the providers compete with one another to reduce the retail price to that maximum marginal wholesale price. Now, if this sounds complicated, it is because it was intended to be complicated, so the citizens of Europe do not understand that this is a scam against them, even during the good times. Proof of that is that since privatization, the difference between the cost of producing an average kilowatt hour and the retail price has trebled. So don't believe anyone who tells you that the problem has nothing to do with the system. The problem is that the cost of production is going up. Yes, the cost of production is going up because the price of natural gas is going up, right? Because the price of this, that, and the other is going up. But that does not explain, the war in Ukraine does not explain why the profit margins of the firms is getting larger. Are we clear on this? Okay. Yesterday, I spoke in the Greek parliament and I exposed a scam of the Greek government, a particularly odious scam of the Greek government. Under pressure from, I would even say, META 25, Dim's electoral wing in Greece, the government made a move months after the pressure came from us. And what was the pressure? Let me be clear. Back in March, 15th of March it was, we presented in Parliament a proposal on how to shield consumers from skyrocketing prices. What we said was this. It is crazy that because the price of electricity produced from natural gas is skyrocketing, because the price of natural gas is skyrocketing, it's crazy, mad, that electricity coming out of solar panels, which costs nothing to produce, once you have the solar panel, it is free. It's got a zero marginal cost. That the company, the private company that is selling solar produced kilowatt hours should get for that kilowatt hour the same price that it would get had it produced it from the most expensive natural gas. It is mad, right? And you don't need to compensate, to subsidize electricity prices. All you need to do is to eliminate these super profits by those idiots. Not idiots, they're very smart. We're the idiots, okay? So we proposed something really very simple, that every kilowatt hour, the price of it should be set by the state equal to its average cost plus 5%. We're saying, okay, nobody should lose money. Even those capitalist entrepreneurs who are profiting, let's not, okay, don't lose money. What is your cost of producing a kilowatt hour or a megawatt hour from hydro? It's 80 euros. Okay, 80 euros plus, let's say, 4 euros of a 5% profit, 84. What is it from solar? Is it 50? Okay, 50 plus 3 of a profit. If you're producing from natural gas, it's very expensive, it's 400 euros because the price of natural gas is skyrocketed. Okay, 400 plus 5%. If you do this and you sum up over all sources of power, of electrical power, we would have had back in March a reduction in the average price of electricity of more than 50%, without any subsidization, without the state borrowing money, without taxing people, without anything. All that would happen is the super profits of the firms with the lowest level of marginal cost would be eliminated by a price cap, okay? Now, comrades, between you and I, sometime in the middle of August, I was a little bit worried because the Greek government, it turned out, on the 6th of July, had legislated something that seemed very much like what we were proposing. I was a bit worried. I thought, oh my God, do I have now to come out and thank the government for doing the right thing? And this is the beauty of it. Now, why am I talking about Greece? Why do the rest of you care? I'll tell you why you care, and then I will explain the fraud. Because yesterday, Ursula von der Leyen came out and announced that the Greek government's scam will be Europeanized. So, you know, comrades in Germany, in France, in Portugal, in Spain, expect the same scam to be coming your way immediately. Well, once they get their act together and they agree on it, because, you know, what the Commission says and Ursula says, nobody cares. But the European Union Council may be deciding to agree with what von der Leyen said yesterday, which is a copy of what the Greek government is doing. Now, listen to what the Greek government is doing. The key, I mean, how did I understand that it's a scam? Because they don't tell you, you know, on footnote 3.8, this is where the scam is. You've got to do some detective work. You have to, you know, decipher it yourself. So I'll tell you how the first inkling we had at META25, the team that we were poring over all these regulations, the first inkling we had that this is a scam is when it mentioned that the auction, the daily auction for the wholesale price continues. This, stock exchange in which wholesale producers are competing with one another in an auction continues. Now, the human mind cannot wrap itself around that. If you have a maximum price that is imposed by government on every different power station, why do you need the auction? Isn't that the obvious question to ask? Okay, now here it is. This is what they do. Okay, remember, the price for every megawatt hour that the government imposed from hydro works was 85 euros, okay? I looked at what the auction yielded, the price. It was 700 during this period, 700. The price cap was meant to be, for those kilowatt hours produced by hydro works, it was meant to be 85 or 112 for some other ones. Takes the 112, which is a bit higher. So this is how it works. The producer of that kilowatt hour or megawatt hour receives the 700 euros that has been determined by the auction in the Netherlands, right? But then they have to give back to the Greek state the difference between the 700 and the price cap of 112, which is 588. So they give it back to the government. So far, no scam, just stupidity, just bureaucracy. Well, here's where the scam comes. The government does not take this money in order to give it to consumers. The government takes this money to give it to the retail companies. Now, if you look at every market almost in Europe, the same shareholder that owns the producer owns the retail company. So it is as if I have a company that is producing electricity, and I have a company that is a retail company. So the government, what it does is, they let the pseudo auction determine the price at 700. Okay, they force me to return to the state from my left pocket, which is my pocket as a producer, 588 euros to the government, and the government puts it in my right pocket. Now, is it any wonder that the consumer feels no relief? No, none, zero, zilch. Then what the government does is, okay, to help you, dear consumer, I'm going to borrow money, the government will borrow money, add it to the government budget to subsidize your electricity bill. In other words, to allow you to give the oligarch the money in my pocket that the government has taken from one pocket and put it in another pocket. Now, if this is not a scam, I do not know what the word scam means. And now this is the proposal by the European Commission in all its glory and greatness for how we're going to deal with. Now, why are they doing this? Because complexity is in the interest of the oligarchy. I just took 23 minutes to explain this to you. Now, no media are going to give me 23 minutes in Greece to explain this to the people out there. Nobody is going to allow the people of France, the people of Portugal, the people of Slovakia, the people of Ukraine, 23 minutes in order to have somebody explain this to them. You get 20 seconds, 23 seconds, and then you are interrupted. And in the meantime, nobody can understand what's going on. People think, okay, so they are imposing a price cap, they are subsidizing the public, so the government is doing something. No, the government is doing nothing. The government are agents of the oligarchy, they are crooks and they are thieves. And this is a clear-cut case of destroying the capacity of the majority of Europeans to make ends meet in the interest of an oligarchy, combining two things. On the one hand, the market fundamentalism of Thatcher that creates the simulated market, which has failed us, especially now that energy prices have gone up, with statism. The state borrowing, increasing public debt, so that the state can subsidize the oligarchs, but not the consumers. The only solution to this is the immediate abandonment of the market model, the closure of the auction house in the Netherlands. And the third thing that we must do, and I know that sounds controversial, but it would be my proposal, end sanctions on Russian energy. The only people who benefit from the sanctions on Russian gas and oil are the Russian oligarchs and the European oligarchs. It is not helping Ukraine. It is not undermining Putin. It is enriching Putin and his oligarchs. I just wanted to add a little vignette. Johannes mentioned the panicky attempt by the German government, but also by other governments, and also by the European Union. Von der Leyen mentioned that yesterday in the small print. They're panicking because the companies that are making huge quantities of money, the electricity companies, out of this crisis, are going bankrupt. Did you get that? They are profiting massively and they're going bankrupt. How is this possible? Let me tell you how it's possible. Because they are all financialized and they are part and parcel of effectively what was happening in Wall Street for decades. Electricity companies do the following. For years now they've been doing it. They've been hedging. In other words, in order to ensure that if the price of electricity goes down, that they won't lose money. That's before the price of electricity went through the roof. In order to ensure that if the price comes down, they won't lose money, they have been purchasing insurance contracts from financial companies. The equivalent, if anybody knows or remembers, through the debt crisis of the CDSs. If you don't remember, it doesn't matter. Ignore what I just said. So they buy insurance. The insurance is a contract for 2, 3, 4 years. So effectively, what they do is this. They buy an insurance contract that, if the price comes down, will give them money. So They will make less money because the prices come down, but they will take money from the insurance company or from the financier that is selling them this insurance company, okay? So that was what they were doing up until now. Now, a lot of those companies, like Uniper, for instance, in Germany, but also here in Greece, in Germany, in France, everywhere, in Italy, yeah, they are locked into these insurance contracts. Now, remember once more, I know this is complicated, but remember once more, these contracts, when the price goes down, they cost more to service, to pay every month your insurance premium. And opposite, when the price of electricity goes up, you have to keep paying a lot more in order to service this contract. So this is what is happening. Because they insure themselves against falling prices, okay, with contracts that would give them money if prices are coming down, now prices are coming up, they have to pay a lot more to the insurance companies. And because they never had the money to pay the insurance companies, do you know how they pay for these insurance contracts? Through issuing bonds. You know what this means? Debt. So these companies like Uniper now have to borrow huge quantities of money in order to pay their insurers. But nobody is lending them because nobody trusts them. So what von der Leyen actually said yesterday, she called upon Europeans, and this is Johannes the point, when they're asking for customers, for citizens, to subsidize the companies, they're asking customers to pay the insurance fees for these companies that have insured themselves against falling prices in an environment in which prices are rising. So to put it in the language of Wall Street, they have shorted their own price and they are now asking for the citizens to pay for it. That's crime number 2, which I'm adding to the charge sheet, crime number 1 from before.
Eu sei que a explicação do Varoufakis foi complicada. Recomendo que vocês assistam esse Varoufakis em mais lugares. Ele era de um partido comunista grego e foi, se eu não me engano, expulso do partido. Não sei, teve toda uma complicação ali que... Ele é amigo do Zizek, acho que também é amigo do Julian Assange. Mas assim, teve toda uma complicação que ele ia comprometer a Grécia a não pagar a dívida externa. Eu sei que ele é um cara bem legal, que tem umas histórias interessantes, passou por umas coisas interessantes em termos de ter se confrontado com as verdadeiras forças do establishment. E eu queria mostrar com esse vídeo, especialmente, quão complicado é o sistema que os políticos fazem quando a gente tem uma... Quer dizer, da minha perspectiva, né? Mas quando a gente tem o nosso tipo de democracia. Porque fica todo mundo olhando para candidatos em quem você vota. Mas essas coisas aí são uns planos mirabolantes que envolvem vários agentes e tal, e ninguém vota nesses caras. Eles é que mexem na máquina. Então a gente vota em quem vai ser manipulado pelos oligarcas, basicamente. Porque os caras não podem não ser manipulados pelos oligarcas. A menos que eles deem um golpe e virem eles mesmos os oligarcas. Se você tiver um estado muito autoritário que toma controle de tudo, daí você substituiu o oligarca por ele. Quer dizer, não sei se tem um jeito de pequenas forças acabarem com uma coisa dessas. Só uma grande força acaba com outra grande força, e os problemas da primeira força vêm com a segunda força em geral. Tanto que quando... Pega, por exemplo, o exemplo clássico que eu dou. Assim que as feministas sentaram no trono do poder, da moral e dos bons costumes, porque hoje é isso que aconteceu. Quem determina o que conta como belo e moral para a sociedade, para todo mundo e tal, são as feministas. No momento em que elas são as responsáveis por determinar isso, elas se tornam cada vez mais parecidas com as religiosas de antes que ditavam as regras. Mais castas e mais puritanas. Você pode... Isso, eu sei que essa é uma questão bem de debate. Não sei como chamar isso, né? Mas tem todo um clima gerado pelo papo feminista que torna tudo mais tão perigoso. Aqui a gente mistura... Aqui vira hiperreal o negócio. A gente mistura muito. Não tem como não misturar aqui o real e o que a gente acha do real. Porque o que a gente acha do real vai influenciar o real de verdade. Então complica muito, mas assim, então o que eu tô dizendo não é exatamente como as coisas são, mas é uma mistura de como as coisas são e como as pessoas veem as coisas. Ficou tão perigoso os caras falarem alguma coisa pra mulher e daí tomar um processo por assédio ou saber fazer qualquer coisa. Os caras estão tão tensos com relação a essas coisas que gera mais castidade. E no fim das contas também contribui pra monogamia. Quer dizer, se vai ser tão trabalhoso, se vai ser um caos tão gigante essa história de sair pra ficar com mulher diferente, se cada uma delas é uma roleta russa, então escolhe uma só e pronto. Você tem os caras aí dizendo, não, tem que ser solteiro, tem que ser solteiro. Mas mano, não vou nem pegar mulher. Não é fácil se segurar. Tem uns caras que falam, tá bom, então vou só ficar com um profissional. Mulher profissional, famosa GP. Sei lá, cara. Pra mim, não vou dizer exatamente as palavras, mas vocês vão entender. Café sem cafeína não é café. Cerveja sem álcool não é cerveja. Não é de verdade a relação. Você tirou a essência da coisa. Você tirou a cafeína do café. Mas enfim, elas geram castidade. Entende? Que não tem nenhum número com relação a isso. Mas será que as próprias feministas diriam que o feminismo ajudou no relacionamento delas? Sabe? Não ela ser feminista, mas essa barulheira que se fez em nome do feminismo ajudou o relacionamento dela? Porque eu acho que as minas mais sensatas vão achar que não. Vão achar que assustou à toa os caras delas. E isso é um problema intrínseco à democracia com mídia. É mediocracia, na verdade. Porque você tem pessoas que votam, você tem pessoas que são eleitas, e você tem, no meio, uma mídia que cria, de certa forma, a imagem de todos os candidatos. Ela tem um poder não infinito, porém muito grande de criar a imagem dos candidatos. É que a mídia, daí eu teria que considerar realmente, tô somando todas as mídias, e elas não são todas aliadas. Então, por exemplo, o YouTube frequentemente vai especificamente, estritamente contra a mainstream media, o que passa na TV. O cara do YouTube vai falar exatamente o contrário do que passa na TV. Chega ao ponto do cara falar que a Terra é plana para que na TV fala que a Terra não é plana, entendeu? Tipo, eu acho que esse é o maior símbolo de quanto que a gente não confia mais na televisão. Tipo, qualquer coisa que sair na Veja ou na Globo, a gente vai concluir que provavelmente é o contrário. Porque é isso, os caras realmente... os caras pisaram na bola nesse nível com a população. E eles que supostamente controlam o processo democrático. Por isso que a mídia tá toda louca com fake news e não sei o que. Porque na verdade a mídia tem controle sobre o processo democrático, e ela perdendo isso, mano, vai saber o que acontece. Vira caos. Mas não vira tão caos, porque é aquela história que eu sempre falo, né? Todo mundo que a gente pode eleger não é cargo tão importante assim. Todo cargo importante mesmo é apontado, às vezes, por alguém eleito. Pega, por exemplo, o STF. Mas às vezes nem isso. Nem sei como é que funciona o processo de escolha de quem, sei lá, controla o Fed, quem controla o FMI, quem controla o Banco Mundial, tá ligado? Tipo, a gente nem sabe os nomes desses caras, mas eles mandam um monte de coisa. Muito mais do que mandam políticos eleitos. Ou até o CEO da BlackRock, sabe? Os caras falam. Tipo, que é a maior holding de investimento. Tipo, eu acho que a empresa que tem mais ações na mão dela. Tipo, a maior parte da riqueza do mundo líquida, digamos assim, tá na mão deles, em fundos aqui ou ali e tal, mas assim, tá na mão deles. Então, tipo, se o CEO deles decidir que o melhor é investir em tal coisa, ele muda a história do mundo muito mais do que um presidente eleito. Quer dizer, provavelmente não é um cara que toma decisão, deve ser um board. Mas pode ser que seja um cara, o CEO deles. Enfim, seja como for, a multiplicação das complicações no regime democrático é inevitável. Porque você vai ter que manipular geral pra eles não perceberem que os caras que eles elegem nem podem fazer o que eles querem, ou acharem tudo bem isso, sabe assim, tipo, aceitarem que você elege um cara e não, mas tem vários poderes e um mudar o outro, não sei o que. Quer dizer, na prática você vota e ninguém faz nada do que você queria que o cara fizesse, porque ele não consegue, literalmente, ele não consegue. Ninguém consegue mudar nada de efetivamente grande sem o consentimento dos grandes. E daí, tudo que é uma ideia boa vira um scam. Tipo, a democracia é esse scam. A gente vai dar pra vocês um esquema que vocês agora votam e escolhem seus representantes. E eles estão escondendo alguma outra coisa por trás que é muito pior. Por exemplo, todo mundo vira cidadão, então você tem que lutar no exército, você tem que pagar imposto e tudo mais. Mas é isso. Falamos o suficiente já sobre isso. Valeu por assistir. Espero que vocês vejam meu novo site, platinho.com.br. Meu novo site tá em construção ainda, mas já tem lá todos os cursos, versão editada e 2.0 dos cursos que eu já dei na seção de membros e no Apoia-se. Então, se você não viu meus cursos, você pode começar se cadastrando direto lá. Mas essa semana, talvez esse vídeo saia depois até e já tenha começado, mas na semana do dia 19, que é quando eu tô gravando isso, já deve rolar o começo da nova era no site. Já deve rolar conteúdo novo, só porque eu não tenho certeza ainda de se eu vou fazer o assunto que eu tava pensando em fazer, e daí talvez eu acabe ficando muito em cima e não consiga avisar direito, sei lá. Mas é isso aí, falou.